infrastructure, but also with some other programs. And here to tell us is Jessica. Take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, Robert. And thanks to Noble for inviting us to attend this conference. It's nice to see everyone today in person and online. I am Jessica Morris, Chief Operating Officer with Tonix Pharmaceuticals. We are a publicly traded company, traded on NASDAQ under the ticker TNXP. I will be making forward-looking statements, so here's our standard safe harbor disclosure, and I refer you to our website for more information on our SEC filings. So who is Tonix Pharmaceuticals? Tonix is a fully integrated biopharmaceutical company, and we are committed to developing and marketing therapeutics to treat pain, neurologic, psychiatric conditions through our CNS, or Central Nervous System portfolio, as well as other areas of high unmet need, including immunology, vaccines for infectious diseases, and also rare diseases. Today I'm going to mostly focus on our lead program, which is part of our CNS portfolio, and I will also touch on our vaccine program in our infectious disease portfolio. But a good tagline, a way to remember Tonix, is that we are transforming therapies for pain management and vaccines for public health challenges. So again, we are CNS focused, fully integrated. We have products in a range of stages, starting with preclinical, going to clinical, all the way to commercial stage. We also have physical facilities, so we are able to say that we are now fully integrated. But this first box here is really where a lot of the value is for our company. And that is our lead product, our later stage program, which is TNX-102 SL, SL stands for sublingual, for fibromyalgia. And as Robert said, we just submitted our NDA, or new drug application, to the FDA in October, mid-October. So the next step is that we would receive an FDA decision on accepting the NDA for review in mid-December. It's typically 60 days from the time that you submit the NDA. So imminently expecting that feedback, and upon review of accepting it for review, they would also assign Tonix with an expected approval date or expected PDUFA date, and assuming a standard review process, that would come in at roughly August of next year, and we would look to launch the product, have sales, and be in the market in late next year, following hopefully the approval in August. But in order to submit the NDA, we had to do a lot of things, but we had to complete 2 phase 3 studies that achieved statistical significance on the primary endpoint, and we have done that. I'll take you through that data. And then we also were recently granted fast track designation by the FDA, and this is important because this is something that the FDA grants to conditions that they believe are serious in nature, so indicating that they believe fibromyalgia is a serious condition, and also that it remains an unmet need. So we are hoping to fill that void, and I'll tell you a lot more about that program as I go through the presentation. But I mentioned we do have a commercial footprint already, and that was through acquiring 2 products for migraine from a company called Upshur Smith. We acquired Zimbrace and Tosymra. Both of these are reformulations of sumatriptan, using sumatriptan as the API. So Zimbrace is an auto-injector, Tosymra is intranasal. So what these products gave us was not just revenue, but we also have commercial infrastructure now. We manage the distribution, 3PL. We're managing the supply chain in-house, and we also have all of our state licenses, et cetera. We have a small sales force, so it's enabled us to start building ahead of hopefully the fibromyalgia launch next year. And then strategic partnerships. This is something we also really focused on in recent years, to partner with government institutions for non-dilutive funding. So we have funding from NIDA for one of our programs. We have a $34 million contract with the DoD for one of our programs. And we also partner with world-class academic institutions such as MGH, Massachusetts General Hospital. Pipeline, we do have an R&D pipeline in addition to our commercial and near commercial stage assets, and I won't focus too much on those today, but just we do have other things in progress there. And then internal capabilities, in addition to commercial, we also do have a physical facility where we can do R&D work and small animal studies as well. So this is just the pipeline view of Our key programs, again, I'm going to focus a lot more detail on TNX-102 SL today for fibromyalgia. We also are expecting to start a study, investigator-initiated study, to investigate acute stress disorder using the same molecule. And we actually updated today at an 8K. We expect that to start Q1 of next year. 1300 is one of our studies that's funded with government, with a government partnership funded by NIDA. That's a phase 2 study ongoing. 1500 is a phase 1 study. It's a monoclonal antibody. I won't focus on that too much today. And then 4200 is the program I mentioned that does have the $34 million contract with the DoD, or DITRO, which is Defense Threat Reduction Agency. And then finally, 801, I'll spend a little bit of time on this. This is our live virus vaccine for mpox and smallpox. And this is in the preclinical stages of development. So turning back to CNS and our lead asset here, 102 SL, again, cyclobenzaprine, it is cyclobenzaprine HCl sublingual tablets. SL stands for sublingual. So this is it's a unique reformulation of cyclobenzaprine that is a novel formulation and a much improved formulation versus oral cyclobenzaprine. And I will spend some more time on that. But just taking a step back to what is fibromyalgia. It is a chronic pain disorder that results from an amplified sensory and pain signaling, or really missignaling within the CNS. It's called nociplastic pain. That's a way to kind of define this type of pain that's hard to define. So fibromyalgia is difficult to diagnose. It's really a diagnosis of exclusion. But what these patients are experiencing are this chronic widespread pain, multi-site pain, non-restorative sleep and fatigue, also cognitive issues. So it really can become quite debilitating for these patients. One analogy we like to compare this to is when you have the check engine light come on in your car and it's malfunctioning. So there's not actually something wrong with the engine, but you're seeing this check engine light come on. So that's kind of what's happening with your central nervous system. Your body is telling you to feel pain, but there's no real external or peripheral reason for your body to be feeling that pain. So it's very frustrating for these patients. And there are a lot of patients. So it's a large market. More than 10 million US adults have fibromyalgia, mostly women. And again, it's considered to be a serious condition. This is evidenced by the fact that the FDA did grant us fast track designation. And there are 3 approved drugs. There's Lyrica, Cymbalta, and Savella. Lyrica and Cymbalta are now generic, but despite these approved drugs, there is still an unmet need. The patients are not satisfied. Again, evidenced by the fact that we have the fast track designation. That's something that's granted to a product where there still exists an unmet need. And this was further validated by some third parties, some external research we had commissioned by a company called Eversana, where they did direct interviews with prescribers, and they found that 85% of patients fail first-line therapy, and this is due to a combination of lack of efficacy and then tolerability issues, which is really important for fibromyalgia, which is a chronic condition. It's something where you need to be taking this medicine every day. So there's still very much a need for a new drug. You can see here there's been no new drug since 2009, so almost 15 years. So I think that these patients are very eager for a new drug that can work and be tolerated. Also, based on our research, we found that just under 3 million patients are diagnosed and treated. Again, a very large market here. So just to go into a little bit more as we lead into the mechanism of how our drug works, the concept of this pain-sleep vicious cycle, which drives fibromyalgia decompensation or a downward spiral of the fibromyalgia symptoms. So I'm sure we've all experienced this cycle at some point in our life. When you are in pain, you can't sleep well, and if you don't sleep well, then your pain is not going to be improved. It's going to exacerbate that problem. You're going to have fatigue during the day and brain fog during the day. So it really is a vicious cycle. And at the point at which Tonix is trying to break that cycle, is the sleep component. So we are focused on improving the sleep quality. This is a bedtime medicine. You take it just before going to bed. You take 2 sublingual tablets that are rapidly absorbed, and that leads to better sleep quality. And I just want to point out here that it's not sleep quantity, so it's not a sedative, hypnotic, it's not Lunesta or Ambien, which do put you to sleep, but they're not necessarily giving you restorative quality sleep, especially when used chronically. They can actually disrupt the sleep architecture. So this is our mechanism of action, and so importantly, we are non-opioid, centrally acting analgesic, and we believe this is offering a transformative approach to facilitating restorative sleep. And the way we do this, or the way the drug works, is that it acts as an antagonist on 4 receptors in the brain, as you see here: serotonergic 5-HT2A, alpha-1 adrenergic, H1 histaminergic, and M1 muscarinic. All of these antagonizing activities are associated with restorative sleep. So what we've seen is that, again, by improving that sleep, we've in turn improved the daytime symptom of pain. That was the primary endpoint in the study. But we also improved fatigue. So pain, sleep, and fatigue, all of these, we can say we now have a broad spectrum activity, a broad spectrum drug, potentially. That this is what our clinical trials have shown to date. Again, this is a sublingual formulation, and that's important because it optimizes the delivery. It's absorbed rapidly transmucosally, and in doing with that rapid absorption, it's aligning the bioavailability of the drug with the sleep cycle, as opposed to oral cyclobenzaprine, which is not absorbed as rapidly, and it takes longer to be, it has a longer half-life. And so patients, if you were to take oral cyclobenzaprine, you feel more of a hangover effect the next day. It also leads to accumulation of a metabolite called norcyclobenzaprine, which is associated with some negative side effects. Dry mouth, actually can be insomnia, activating at night. And so, all the things that you do not want to have happen to a fibromyalgia patient, especially when this is being used chronically. And I also want to point out that the oral cyclobenzaprine is not approved for fibromyalgia. This was approved initially as a muscle relaxant several decades ago, developed by Merck, approved for acute use only. Our drug is being approved for chronic use, specifically for fibromyalgia, and they have a very different side effect profile and efficacy profile. Cyclobenzaprine oral has actually been studied in trials and has not worked. So we view this as very differentiated from the oral formulation. And then relative to the approved drugs, again, I mentioned Lyrica, Cymbalta, Sabella. We think that we have the potential here to maintain that efficacy, if not improve it, and to have better tolerability. And I'll take you through the side effects comparison and another slide. But overall, we have a very benign side effect profile and favorable tolerability. And then our drug is not scheduled. It will not be scheduled. There's no abuse potential recognized. We'll not have to do abuse studies. And then kind of covering it up here, but we have patent protection is expected through 2034, so roughly 10 years of market exclusivity, assuming approval next year. So here is the program status of fibromyalgia. So again, we submitted the NDA. In order to do this, we had to complete 2 pivotal phase 3 studies that were statistically significant. The first one that was successful for us read out in December of 2020, and this was about 500 patients, multi-site in the U.S. All of our studies were done in the U.S. All of the studies were randomized, double-blinded, placebo-controlled studies, and that p-value was a p of less than 0.01. The FDA requires 2 studies, so we did conduct the second, what we hoped would be the second study called Rally, and that read out in July of 2021. But unfortunately, that study did not hit the primary endpoint, and we think there's we speculate for different reasons, but what we did see was that there was an increase in dropouts or discontinuation rates of that study in both the drug and placebo groups. And we speculate that it had to do with the time that this trial overlapped with the pandemic and there's just a reluctance of patients to stay in the study and other confounding issues. But suffice it to say, we saw enough to try again with the Resilient study, and that read out about a year ago, and that p-value was 0.00005, so highly statistically significant. And of course, we have gone on to meet with the FDA in pre-NDA meetings. Subsequent to that, we were granted fast track designation. We submitted the NDA, and we expect to hear back from the acceptance again in this month, imminently. One other thing I'll point to that we have done is we have started pre-launch activities, and we actually put out a press release this morning to announce that we have 2 new key hires. Ahead of this launch, we've hired a VP of marketing, who was most recently with Axsome, and we have also hired a VP of medical affairs. A few months ago, we hired our EVP of commercial to head this team. So we are very excited to be building this team, and we are continuing to be very focused on the pre-launch activities for fibromyalgia. So here's a little bit more detailed view of the primary endpoint, which again was changed from baseline to week 14 in the weekly average of daily pain. And so you can see here graphically depicted the placebo in red, the TNX-102 SL in blue, so you can see the separation. You always want to see these good amount of separation here, and you can see it really has rapid onset, starting to decrease even in the first couple of weeks of use. But ultimately, this results in a p-value of 0.00005. So very pleased with that outcome. We also looked at several secondary endpoints. We looked at endpoints that looked at sleep and fatigue. So again, you can see we hit on all of those endpoints as well, a lot of zeros in those p-values. So all of those were statistically significant. And this is what really allows us to say that the drug has broad spectrum activity. It's not only working on pain, it's working on sleep and fatigue. And then the effect sizes that we have listed here is another way to kind of measure the clinical meaningfulness of these studies. And generally anything better than a 0.2 is considered clinically meaningful. So also pleased with the effect size outcomes here. And then safety and tolerability, I think this is a distinguishing characteristic of our drug versus what is approved. First of all, good completion rates in both the drug and placebo groups, 81 and 79%. No new safety signals observed versus prior studies. Only systemic adverse events, and this is going down to a rate of 3%, which is quite low, was somnolence, headache. COVID is really just something that we have to report. But the other side effect that we see, which is not systemic, it's more of a local site reaction, is tongue numbness, and this is due to the fact that it's a sublingual tablet. So some patients do experience a transient tongue numbness, tongue tingling, but we have not seen that this has really affected the efficacy or discontinuations of the study. And what we did not see weight gain, we did not see changes in blood pressure. Some of the other approved drugs do have these issues, and I'll show you a slide on that. And we actually did improve sexual dysfunction in females, and we also improved cognitive abilities as well. Brain fog was also improved. We don't have that listed here, but we looked at several other endpoints outside of just the key secondaries. So this kind of summarizes what I have said about 102 SL. It works on pain, sleep, and fatigue, and the main side effect is this oral site reaction. But I think this is interesting. So these are the approved drugs: Lyrica, and then which was developed by Pfizer, and then which is a gabapentinoid, and then Cymbalta and Cymbalta, which are both SNRIs developed by Lilly and AbbVie. And you can see that neither of them hit on all 3 categories of pain, sleep, and fatigue. They're hitting on 2 out of the 3. And then they also have quite a bit of tolerability issues. I think with Lyrica, especially weight gain is a big issue, and really is a reason that a lot of patients aren't put on this. Fibromyalgia patients are not put on this. It's also scheduled. With Cymbalta, you have sleep issues, you have sexual impairment, you have blood pressure issues, GI issues. So again, especially with drugs that need to be taken chronically, all of these problems lead to discontinued use and the reason that there remains a need for a new drug. And then here's another slide that came out of our research that we did with Eversana, and we were quite surprised by the fact that there's still so much opioid use used for this population. Of course, off-label, they're not indicated for fibromyalgia, but because it's pain and it's difficult to diagnose and difficult to treat, unfortunately, patients are prescribed off-label opioids despite the approved products. And so, again, we are really hoping that we can replace that use, to discontinue that use of opioids for this patient population. It's obviously detrimental to them, and I think we have a safe, effective alternative. So that's really it on the fibromyalgia side. I just have a few minutes, so I'm going to try to wrap it up. We are doing another study using 102 SL for acute stress reaction. We expect that to start next quarter. This has funding from the DoD, and we're partnering with UNC to conduct that study. And I think it just goes to show that 102 SL can be used in other indications where sleep quality, disturbed sleep is a component of the symptoms. These are our marketed products that I mentioned earlier, Zimbrace and Tosymra. And again, not only giving us revenue, but also giving us that commercial footprint, commercial infrastructure, ultimately to hopefully be used for 102 SL for fibromyalgia. Okay, so 801, TNX-801, I'll quickly touch on this. This is our live virus vaccine candidate for Mpox as well as smallpox. This is a live virus vaccine. It is a replicating vaccine. And we have done several animal studies, non-human primate studies, but it is pre-IND, it is preclinical at this point. But what we think is differentiated about it is that it is, first of all, single dose. You do not need to get multiple doses or boosters, and the reason is because it results in eliciting a T cell immune response rather than just an antibody response, and that is associated with a longer durability of the immunity that it's providing. So these are the facilities that we have here. The ADC is currently decommissioned, but it does have the potential capability to manufacture this vaccine in-house for us. So this shows that it's not just for Mpox and smallpox. It's really a platform where it can be used as a vector for other types of infectious diseases, including COVID. So at some point we may look to develop it for that as well as other infectious diseases. And where it really falls in the spectrum is that it is, just to summarize it very high level, is that we believe it is more efficacious than the MVA vaccines and with less side effects than the robustly replicating vaccines. So you have ACAM2000 on that side and Jynneos on the other side, and we believe we fall in the middle with maintaining efficacy with better side effect profile. But again, it is preclinical, so we have not guided on the timing beyond that. This is the study that we have the DoD contract with, $34 million for this. It's a broad spectrum antiviral program. Ultimately could be used for the warfighters, but again, very preclinical, early stages right now, so I'm not going to focus too much on that. We have a C-suite management team that's been together for about a decade, led by Seth Letterman, who's a rheumatologist doctor by training, also the co-founder of this company, and he's been on the business side for several decades now. And I just want to end with our milestones. Really, most important, most imminent milestone is that we expect to hear back from the FDA on a decision to review the NDA. And assuming a standard NDA review time, we would expect a PDUFA or approval date in August of next year. We did apply for priority review. We were eligible for that because we have fast track designation. If we were to get priority review, we could have approval as soon as April of next year. But we will find out all of that imminently, again, in December. And so, either way, looking towards an approval date next year and launching this product next year. So really excited that this has been a huge milestone for Tonix, over a decade in the making, but not only for our company, but also for these patients who desperately want a new treatment. So thank you very much for your time today. If you have questions, I'm happy to take them.
With more than 6,000 small and micro-cap companies listed, if you're looking for the next Apple, then Channelchek truly is your tree. It's an investor community where you can access independent Wall Street research, advanced market data, balanced news, corporate videos, and podcasts. You can even register to attend in-person Meet the Management Series lunches, and to be part of the preeminent annual Small and Microcap Investor Conference, NobleCon. And here's the best news. Since Channelchek is sponsored by the featured companies, premium membership requires no investment. It's absolutely free. So check it out. Log in today. Find out why Channelchek is North America's leading source of research on the companies that just may change the world.